The Orioles failed to complete the sweep over the Braves on Thursday, which brought their 6-game winning streak to an end. But they fought in this one, and they added another piece to their 40-man roster that could help the bullpen down the stretch this season. And I'll get to it all coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast.
You are Locked On Orioles, your daily Baltimore Orioles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
There, Orioles fans, today is Friday, June 14th, 2024, and welcome back into the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Connor Newcomb, and coming up on today's episode, we are going to recap the Orioles' 6-3 loss to the Atlanta Braves on Thursday afternoon. They got the series, couldn't get the sweep, and it did snap their 6-game winning streak. Going to get you the 5 things you need to know from that one, including an up and down start from Cole Irvin, a nice 2024 debut from Bryan Baker, and a big swing for the Orioles from Kyle Stowers. Plus, we'll talk about the Orioles roster move that they made on Thursday, claiming right-handed pitcher Levi Stoudt off waivers from the Mariners. Now, he was already optioned to AAA, but the question is, can he help the Orioles at the big league level this year? I'll give you the scouting report on the 26-year-old righty. And finally, I do my bullpen trust power rankings most Fridays. I'm going to switch it up this Friday. How about the hitter trust power rankings? How I'm feeling about all 13 hitters on the Orioles roster right now. That's all coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast, which is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. So we start today with an Orioles loss, and it's been a little while since I recapped an Orioles loss on the show. It was actually 1 week ago, last Friday, when I recapped a loss in Toronto. This one is a loss in Baltimore to the Atlanta Braves. An afternoon game, getaway day for the Braves on Thursday. Final score in this one, the Atlanta Braves beating the Orioles 6-3 to close out this 3-game series. O's won the first 2, so they won the series, couldn't complete the sweep, and of course, they had their 6-game winning streak come to an end. The Orioles, with the loss on Thursday, now 45-23 through 68 games this season, but shout out to the Royals. Michael Garcia, 2-run walk-off double in the 9th inning against the Yankees on Thursday afternoon. So the Yankees finally lose as well, and the Orioles stay 2.5 games back of New York. And I'm going to get you the 5 things you need to know from the Orioles' 6-3 loss to the Braves on Thursday. The first thing you need to know from this one is Cole Irvin had a bad beginning to this start, but kind of did settle in, and I thought still pitched overall solid in this game for the O's. Now, it wasn't up to the standards that Irvin has set so far here in 2024, but he was okay. 5 2/3 innings, 4 runs, 3 of them earned on 9 hits. He struck out 8, which was cool to see, and walked only 1, and threw 100 pitches on the dot against the Braves offense in this one, who had 8 hard hit balls against him in 5 2/3 innings. And it was a rough start. Atlanta had a 2-0 lead in the top of the first inning, and Cole Irvin had thrown only 4 pitches in the game. 4 pitches got them a 2-0 lead. First pitch of the game, Michael Harris leadoff single. Second pitch of the game, Ozzie Albies double. Then there's a pitch, and then the 4th pitch of the game, Marcell Ozuna 2-run double, and immediately it's 2-0. But Irvin settled in, got out of that first inning with only the 2 runs on the board, and then he started to cruise a little bit, and he got a 0 in the second, 0 in the third. Unfortunately, an error extended the 4th, in which he allowed another run, got a 0 in the 5th, and then just kind of ran out of gas in the 6th inning, giving up another run before leaving the game. But I thought overall, those runs in the 4th and 6th were a little more unlucky. He had a good zone rate of 63% in this one. I think that the big issue, and again, he struck out 8 and walked 1. So it's not like he had huge command issues, and 8 strikeouts in 5 2/3, that is a lot for anybody, and especially for a guy who pitches like Cole Irvin. I just thought the general issue when he was giving up those 9 hits and was giving up those 4 runs on Thursday was the state of the strike zone. The home plate umpire had a very small, and albeit consistent, which was good, but just very, very tiny strike zone. That might have been the smallest strike zone the Orioles have seen all year. And that can be fine for guys like Corbin Burns and Grayson Rodriguez and Kyle Bradish, who their stuff is good in the middle of the plate if they need it to be there. A small strike zone is not good for a pitcher like Cole Irvin, because the way Cole Irvin has success is he nibbles on the corners, he gets called strikes, and then he gets guys to expand the zone just enough for either strikeouts or slow grounders or pop-ups, and that is how he cruises through innings. but he was trying to hit the corners. He was just missing. The Braves weren't biting. He was getting behind in a lot of counts. And although it only resulted in one walk because he just generally throws a lot of strikes, it forced him to come into the middle of the plate more often than he does. And that led to the 9 hits. That led to more runs from the Braves. So maybe a different umpire. Irvin just has a better day. And again, it wasn't bad umpiring. It was very consistent, which you love to see. Just a tighter zone than you're definitely used to seeing. And he just didn't get the 50-50 calls, which a guy like Cole Irvin needs, but still felt like he at least kept the O's in the game in this one when it certainly could have gotten very out of hand after the way it started with the first 3 batters. Second thing you need to know from the Orioles' loss on Thursday is that I thought Bryan Baker looked really good in his return to the mound for the Orioles. Of course, Baker was called up earlier this week as Danny Coulombe hit the injured list, and Baker, who was a big part of the Orioles bullpen each of the last 2 seasons, has spent this entire year in AAA, didn't pitch in the first 2 games of this series, but made his 2024 Orioles debut in the game on Thursday, replacing Irvin with a runner on and 2 outs in the 6th. And it was the perfect spot to get him in there, right? 6th inning, righties coming up. Orioles already down 4-0. Wasn't really high leverage. Great way to slide Bryan Baker in for the first time. And then he looked pretty good. He got the final out of the 6th to keep it 4-0. He put up a scoreless 7th. He retired the first batter of the 8th before he was removed. And when it was all said and done, an inning and 2/3 scoreless with just 1 hit on 32 pitches for Bryan Baker. And now he didn't strike anybody out, and he didn't have like crazy swing and miss stuff up there against the Atlanta offense. But I was looking for a couple of things from this first outing, and it was nice that he threw 32 pitches because we got kind of a large sample size of Bryan Baker in the first big league outing of the year. First of all, he only threw 4 changeups, and that's the pitch that is the difference maker for him. But the changeup was 4 miles per hour harder than he threw it last year when he was in the big leagues. When Baker was throwing that changeup, it was 83, 84. That pitch used to be like 79 to 80. So that was kind of nice to see. He commanded it better. He got some strikes with that pitch. But, you know, the fastball velocity was solid. The pitch I like to see was the curveball. That is the brand new pitch for Bryan Baker this year. He's never thrown it before. And that was his number 2 pitch, 17 fastballs, 6 curveballs, 5 sliders, 4 changeups. He got a whiff on that pitch. He knocked it into the zone. He got a couple of lazy flyouts with that curveball. He threw 6 of them, and 5 of them were in the strike zone. He seemed to have good command of it. I'm not saying Bryan Baker is going to become a high leverage guy, but I outwardly said last month on the pod I was kind of done on the Bryan Baker train. I was the last guy on it. Pulling me back in with this first outing of the year. Third thing you need to know from the O's loss Thursday is that Kyle Stowers absolutely mashed his first home run of the year. It ended up being the only Orioles offense in this 6-3 loss, but he got all of it. Stowers coming to the plate with runners on first and second and 2 down in the bottom of the 7th. Orioles trailing 4-0, just trying to get a rally, get on the board against Braves right-handed reliever Pierce Johnson, which is a funny name in itself. And Stowers went up there looking curveball. Johnson has a good curveball. Got a first pitch curveball that was right around the knees in the middle of the plate, and Stowers unloaded, demolishing a 3-run home run into the right center field seats below the scoreboard to put the O's right back in this game, making it 4-3 in the 7th. 108.7 off the bat, 439 feet was the second longest home run hit by an Oriole all season, and it was the first homer of the year and the first big league homer since 2022 for Kyle Stowers. Had to feel good for him in that moment. And it was good to see him back in the starting lineup. Stowers hitting 8th, and he was DHing on Thursday, mostly because he's coming back from a bit of an injury. Kind of slid awkwardly on a diving catch he made in Toronto last week, bent his wrist back underneath his body, had gotten in a game since then, but hadn't really, played this big a role. Seems like he was healthy enough. He's DH. I'm sure we'll see him in at least 1 point this weekend against the Phillies, but nice to see him back in the lineup and to see him just absolutely go up, looking curveball, demolish a curveball, and get the Orioles back in this game. And you kind of remember, like, hey, Stowers has been good since getting this chance, and he continues to at least prove that he deserves, even if it just is a bench spot, a roster spot for the Orioles. Fourth thing you need to know from this loss is that I just kind of thought the Orioles overall played some sloppier baseball than we are used to. They made an error in the 4th. The situation, 2 outs, runner on first. It's a 2-0 game. Ground ball is hit to Mateo up the middle. He backhands it, tries to flip it to Gunnar real quickly, who's covering second, because there really wasn't going to be a play at first. And the throw was low, but it was also catchable for Gunnar, and he just dropped it. If you could do this as an official scorer, I would have given a half error to Mateo and a half error to Henderson on that play. And then the very next batter, Ozzie Albies RBI single makes it 3-0. Then you have Gunnar dropping the ball on a transfer later in the game on what could have been a double play, lost the chance to do that. Then, top of the ninth inning, it's a 4-3 game. CNL Perez is out there. His job, just keep it 4-3, give the O's a chance in the bottom of the ninth. And first pitch, slow roller, flips it to first. Ryan O'Hearn just kind of drops it on a close play, makes the error. Then a Perez wild pitch, and that ninth gets away from him, and Atlanta gets 2 huge insurance runs in the top of the ninth off CNL Perez. And it wasn't like the sloppiest game I've ever seen. Trust me, I watched the 2018 and 2019 Baltimore Orioles, but just with as clean and good a baseball as they've been playing here in the month of June, it was kind of surprising to see them make multiple mistakes in one game. And it certainly wasn't the one reason they lost, but they definitely hurt the O's in this one. And the fifth and final thing you need to know from the Orioles' 6-3 loss to the Braves on Thursday that snapped their 6-game winning streak is that even with that kind of flat, kind of sloppy performance at times, this Orioles team never went away. I mean, they got absolutely shut down by Reynaldo Lopez, who has been incredible for the Braves this year. Had been a reliever. Atlanta signs him to be a starter. He comes in with a sub-2 ERA, and he showed all of it. Just pinpoint command on the corners. Lopez giving the Braves what he's done most times he's gone out there this year for Atlanta. He gives them 6 scoreless innings, 2 hits, 1 walk, 8 strikeouts in this one. And it's a 4-0 game going into the 7th. Not a lot of teams are going to be able to come back from that, but the Orioles they don't care. They get a couple runners on. Cedric Mullins draws a big 2-out walk. Stowers hits the 3-run homer in the 7th. All of a sudden, it's a 1-run game. Then, you think, okay, Atlanta gets 2 in the top of the 9th. The O's, there goes their chance. But no, they get runners on in the bottom of the 9th. You get a Westberg hit by pitch. Cedric Mullins hits a single. It was a nice swing. Mullins started to look a lot better at the plate. And they get Ryan Mountcastle up there as a pinch hitter for Jorge Mateo, 2 on, 2 out, representing the tying run in the 9th. Now, he grounded out to end the game, and the Orioles lost, but they have that fight in them where they took multiple hits and still did not go away in this one. And yeah, they lost, but shows you, like, even in the losses, they show you things that tell you this is a pretty great baseball team. And I think the 45-23 record at the moment certainly shows that, despite the loss on Thursday. But O's lost the game Thursday, but they did add another piece who could help their bullpen at some point this year. That is the right-hander Levi Stoudt, who they claimed on waivers on Thursday. And coming up next, I'll give you the scouting report on Stout, who he is, what he's done, and what he could do for the Orioles this season. But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is brought to you by Tax Network USA. Now, I know tax season might be over, but here at Locked On Orioles, we pride ourselves in getting you the latest news for your team, whether it's the offseason, the draft, spring training, or the playoffs. It's year-round. You know what else is year-round? Collection season. Just because tax season is over doesn't mean the IRS will stop coming after your unfiled taxes. The IRS can garner your wages, levy your bank accounts, and even seize your property. Don't let the IRS target you. Let the licensed professionals and tax experts at Tax Network USA go to bat for you. With over 14 years of experience and an A+ rating by the Better Business Bureau, Tax Network USA has saved their clients over $1 billion in tax debt. Whether you owe taxes, have complicated matters that require tax planning, or you finally hit that parlay this season and just need help correctly filing, call 1-800-549-1000 or visit tnusa.com/lockedon, or you can see the link in this episode description below. So the Orioles fell to the Braves 6-3 on Thursday, snapping their 6-game winning streak, but they did add to the roster today as well, making another waiver claim for a pitcher that they hope can help them at some point this season. It is the 26-year-old right-hander Levi Stoudt, who the Orioles claimed off waivers from the Seattle Mariners on Thursday. Now, the Orioles did not have an open 40-man roster spot at the time, but in theory, they really have 2, because we know John Means and Tyler Wells are both officially out for the season, but both currently are just on the 15-day injured list. What they did is they transferred John Means to the 60-day injured list because they know he is out for the year. And with the MLB transaction rules, if you get moved onto the 60-day injured list, you no longer count against the 40-man roster. You still stay on the team, and when you are reinstated the next season, you come back onto the 40-man roster. But for now, you go off the 40-man, and that clears up a spot. That is the spot for Levi Stoudt. Now, luckily, and this is one of the reasons why the Orioles made a claim on him, Levi Stoudt still does have minor league options. So the Orioles claimed him, cleared the spot on the 40-man, and immediately optioned him down to AAA Norfolk. So that is where he will begin his time with the Orioles organization. It will be in AAA. And that's what Stout's been used to this year. He has spent the entire 2024 season in AAA Tacoma with the Seattle Mariners. So he wasn't like DFA'd off the big league roster. They just added some guys over the past couple of days, and they needed 40-man space. He was on the Mariners 40-man roster despite not being on the big league roster, and they decided to DFA him to clear room. Now, he has not been great in AAA this year. He's still been working as a starting pitcher, which he's basically his entire career. And in 52 innings in 12 starts for the Mariners AAA affiliate, he had a 6.29 ERA with a 15% strikeout rate, which is low, but not unusual for Stout. But a 12% walk rate is pretty much the highest of his career in the minor leagues, kind of struggling a little bit with the command this year. But what he has been doing well is avoiding hard contact. He only has a 34% hard hit rate against him in AAA this year, which is pretty good. So although he's allowing base runners on, he's not striking guys out. He's getting a good amount of, soft ground balls, lazy fly balls to get him out of innings when he needs to. Now, in terms of the stuff you'll see from Levi Stoudt, it is a 4-pitch mix. The 4-seam fastball, he throws it a lot, 45% of the time, sits around 93 up to 95, 96. Doesn't have, the greatest induced vertical break with all that rise, but it is a solid fastball he likes to throw at the top of the zone. And his number 2 pitch is a slider. He throws the slider 42% of the time. It's kind of similar to a Kyle Bradish pitch mix. Slider's down at 83, but only has a 21% swing and miss rate on it. That is not very good for a pitch that theoretically would be your strikeout pitch. And that is why his strikeout rate has been so low in AAA this year. Now, he also has a curveball he only uses 9% of the time. And then there's a changeup as well that he's only used 4% of the time this year in AAA. It's kind of like a changeup. I guess I call it a split change, really is what it is, but doesn't throw it too much. We will get to that split change, though, again, in just a second. Now, Stout has pitched in the big leagues before. He made his major league debut with the Cincinnati Reds back in 2023. Appeared in 4 games for the Reds last year, 2 starts, 2 relief appearances, and it didn't go great. 11 runs allowed on 16 hits over 10 and a third innings with 9 strikeouts, 8 walks, and a homer allowed in his first time in the bigs. Not amazing. Now, Stout, back in the day, was pretty highly coveted draft pick and prospect. He was selected in the 3rd round of the 2019 MLB draft by the Seattle Mariners and was a pretty highly rated pitching prospect in their system. Now, right after the draft, he got Tommy John surgery, and the Mariners drafted him knowing he needed Tommy John. He actually slipped down to the 3rd round because he needed TJ. And the Mariners knew that, and they still went on with drafting him and going through Tommy John. And he apparently, according to Eric Longenhagen and his write-up at Fangraphs about Stout in the Reds or the Mariners system, he was at one point a top 10 prospect in their system for a good chunk of time. But Longenhagen writes about how they kind of changed his delivery a little bit when he was coming back from the Tommy John surgery. And before that, he had this devastating splitter. That was his number 1 off-speed pitch. But according to Longenhagen, the way that they changed his delivery, it made, although his slider and fastball more effective, it made his splitter less effective. And that was the pitch that Baseball America had called like this crazy, insane weapon. Like everybody loved watching his splitter. And that pitch has kind of just faded away as his years have gone on, as he's rolled through the minor leagues. He's gone up the ladder in the minors, but his walks have gone up and his strikeouts have gone down as he has moved through the minor leagues. Now, the Mariners did trade him away to the Reds at the deadline in 2022. He was a part of that big prospect package that went from Seattle to Cincinnati when the Mariners got their ace, Luis Castillo, in return in that trade. And at that point, he was rated by Fangraphs as the number 14 prospect in the Mariners system. Now, the Reds picked him up. He pitched a while in AAA. They called him up for his big league debut last year, but in the offseason this year, with the Reds wanting to add to their roster, Levi Stoudt did not hold on to his roster spot. He was DFA'd in the offseason. The Mariners said, you know what? We like Levi. We'll take him back. And the Mariners claimed him on waivers this offseason, stuck him in AAA, but he struggled there, never got out of AAA. And then they DFA'd him on Sunday. And that is when the Orioles came calling. So in terms of what he'll do in Norfolk, at first you look and say, okay, at the very least, he is starting depth for the Norfolk Tides, right? The Orioles traded away Garrett Stallings. They called up Cade Povich to the big leagues. Bruce Zimmerman still on the mend. You just need some starting depth in AAA. And that could happen. He could make a few starts there just to eat some innings for the O's. But I think more long-term, the reason why they targeted him and got him on waivers from the Mariners is that they most likely see it more likely that he can help them in the bullpen. And when Eric Longenhagen did do his write-up on Stout in the 2022 Mariners list over at Fangraphs, he talked about how he could be a starter, but he really thought Stout was going to be much better if he moved to a relief role when he got to the big leagues. And he's really never gotten that chance. He's been a starter all throughout his time in the minor leagues. And I think the Orioles here are going to be the team that gives him a chance in the bullpen. They're going to work him out of the pen, I think, in Norfolk as kind of a multi-inning reliever. And I also think what they're going to do is to try and find that splitter, that devastating splitter that, to be fair, when it was nasty, he also did not have good command of it. And that's one of the reasons why he kind of went away from it as the years went on. But if you have a pitch that can be that special, it's very similar to Bryan Baker's changeup, right? Like, it's a crazy nasty pitch, but he's had bad command of it, so he stopped throwing it. Now he's throwing it a little bit more because he's starting to find the feel. If they can get Levi Stoudt to find the feel of that splitter and bring it back to add it to this fastball slider combo, maybe the O's have something here. You know, they're going to put him in the pitching lab, try to turn him into a good reliever, and hope that he can maybe help the Orioles bullpen at some point this season. And at the very least, maybe he can stick on the 40-man roster. You know, he's barely been in the big leagues, so you have some team control of him if you want. And maybe you can turn him into something, even if it's not this year. Maybe he sticks in AAA and you have something next year with one of these former top pitching prospects that they brought in Levi Stoudt. But I don't think we're going to see him very soon. This could be more of a second half of the season help to the O's if they are able to fix some things and get him to where he needs to be an effective big league reliever for the Orioles. But flipping back from the pitching side to the hitting side, you all know my bullpen trust power rankings. Well, let's do the hitter trust power rankings. I'll explain them and go through them to finish off a Friday pod coming up next. But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is also brought to you by Game Time. The great thing about Game Time is it is an official ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball. Best part about Game Time is the prices on the Game Time app, well, they actually go down the closer it gets to tip off. Yeah, you wait longer and the prices go down. I will take that every time. They've got killer last minute deals, all in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Game Time, it takes the guesswork out of buying Major League Baseball tickets. What I like about the app is how easy it is to buy the tickets. I've said this before. I've bought them on Utah Street. They come right to my phone for a low price, and I just scan it right on the Game Time app and go into the gate. And you can get last minute deals like I've done for those, save up to 60% off buying last minute tickets to the Orioles games. So take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets, Orioles tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for just $20 off your first purchase. That's LOCKEDONMLB, LOCKEDON Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. So to finish off today's Friday episode, finish off the week on the podcast, I generally on most Fridays do my bullpen trust power rankings, kind of check back in with how I'm feeling about each member of the Orioles bullpen. But I've talked a lot about the bullpen recently. They've been pitching incredibly well. Figured it would be a chance that I heard from a few listeners this could be a good idea. Maybe the hitter trust power rankings right here. Looking at the Orioles' 13 hitters and how much do I trust them? And the way I put it right now is, these are the two criteria. One, it's how I feel about them right now as I record Thursday, June 13th. And it's also, how much do I trust them to just come up big in any situation? Doesn't have to be in a clutch situation, just come up big. How much do I trust them to get a hit, get on base, do something good at the plate for the Orioles every time they are up? And, do something good every time, but this is how I feel about all these guys. So it's the same thing as the bullpen trust rankings. Got three categories: trust, maybe trust, and don't trust. And let's start with the 6 hitters. It's pretty good. 6 hitters I currently have in the trust category. And it's some of the names that you're going to have in that category as well. Let's start with Gunnar Henderson. Need I say more? He's an MVP candidate. He's got a 971 OPS. He's been amazing this year. Obviously, he's up there, team leading 21 homers. Adley Rutschman at a 295 average. All these stats, by the way, are entering Thursday's game. 295 average leads the team. He's hitting for more power this year. He's been amazing from the right side. Still been pretty good from the left side. Yeah, obviously Adley Rutschman. Ryan O'Hearn has somehow gotten better this year from his breakout year last year. A 10% strikeout rate to go along with a 282 batting average is absurd. This is a little bit of overstepping, but he's kind of like Luis Ariz with power is what he's doing at the plate right now. It's incredible. And he's hitting the middle of the Orioles order. Anthony Santander, maybe a couple of weeks ago, he would have been down in maybe trust, but he has been on one of his heaters. He's kind of cooling off a little bit. He hit a ball to the warning track in the first inning Thursday, thought he had another 2-run homer to tie the game off of Reynaldo Lopez, but he's got a 984 OPS and 5 home runs in the month of June. Yeah, I'm trusting him right now. Ryan Mountcastle's been swinging the bat well all season. He's got 5 home runs in June as well. He's got an 874 OPS. Heck, Ryan Mountcastle's hitting 277 this season. Like, for a guy like Mountcastle, that's a pretty high average, and you like to see it. And then my last guy in the trust category is Jordan Westburg. Expected batting average of 296. He gets on base. He hasn't really slumped at all. He's just been consistent all year. I love to watch him hit. I love to watch him play defense. I trust him in any situation at the plate. So 6 of the 13 are in the trust category. And then for me, I've got 4 in the maybe trust category. My first in maybe trust is Jorge Mateo. The reason I put him in maybe trust is if he's facing a lefty, he is absolutely in trust for me. He's got a 939 OPS against left-handed pitching. If he's facing a righty, he's bordering on don't trust and maybe trust. That's how I kind of feel about Jorge Mateo. The speed helps him because he can just get on base a little bit more, hits a slow infield grounder, but I'll settle in with maybe trust. And he's still been a good 9 hitter for the O's this year. Kyle Stowers. Now, that was a monster 3-run homer on Thursday. He's hitting 303 with an 809 OPS, but it's a small sample size. And he also has a very, very high 33% strikeout rate. That is not sustainable if you keep swinging like that. But also the hard hit numbers are really good. It's kind of a toss and turn. He's not an everyday player for the Orioles. There's reasons for that. I've got him in maybe trust for that category, but a way to move up. Talking about a guy moving up, if I would have done this a few weeks ago, Austin Hayes would have been in don't trust for a long time. But Austin Hayes is in maybe trust. He's hitting lefties well. He is hitting well over 300 since he returned from the IL with that calf injury in mid-May. He's been really good. He's playing more regularly again in left field and helping out this Orioles lineup. I've got him in maybe trust. And then the last guy in maybe trust is Colton Cowser. Again, he would have been easily in trust had I done this earlier this season, but it's been a bit of a struggle. Cowser is hitting under 200 since the start of May. And it's just, I need to do a whole episode about Colton Cowser's 2024 season so far. Like, one of the best hitters in baseball, full stop, in the month of April. Then the stats have been pretty poor in May and June, but the content is still elite. He's got a 17% barrel rate. The only guys with higher barrel rate than that are named, like, I don't know if you've heard of them, Aaron Judge, Shohei Ohtani, Juan Soto. Those are the only handful of guys that are barreling the ball more often than Colton Cowser is this year. His hard hit rate is up near 50%. That is elite. But he's not making enough contact. 32% whiff rate. It's a high strikeout rate. He's swinging and missing at basically every breaking ball he sees, but he's crushing fastballs, which is what, of course, we saw with the game-winning home run he hit on Wednesday night. It's a weird profile, and that weird profile puts him in maybe trust for me. And then that leaves 3 players in don't trust. Now, Cedric Mullins has been swinging it better, but it's still a 547 OPS. He's still got to show me more to get out of it. He is still in don't trust at the moment, but I am confident he's going to at least move himself into maybe trust pretty soon here. And then there's the last 2 guys who are just down here because they don't really play that much. And one is James McCann. He's not here to hit. He's here to catch, be a leader. Now, we know the Orioles are 9-0 the last 2 years when James McCann gets multiple hits in a game, but I'm not expecting much from him, and I definitely don't trust him to come up big in spots. And then the last guy is Ramon Arias. If he keeps doing what he's been doing lately, he could push himself into maybe trust. Like, he's been hitting around 300 the last month or so when he's gotten chances. You know, Westburg got hit by the pitch. Mateo has the concussion. There's just been more chances out there for Arias, but I need to see more, and I'll put him in don't trust for now. But again, him and Mullins could certainly move up those categories. So that's how I feel about the Orioles hitters right now. Let me know in the YouTube comments. Of course, like, comment, and subscribe to the Locked On Orioles YouTube page. Also, leave us a rating and a review wherever you listen to the pod as well. They all really help out the show. But let me know in the YouTube comments right here. Take the 13 hitters on the Orioles team. Put them in those 3 categories. How do you have them? Trust, maybe trust, and don't trust. What did I do right? What did I do wrong with putting together that list? I think it's always good to kind of reassess, where the Orioles line up at this point in the season. But that'll do it for today's episode. I am back on Monday. I'll be recapping what is going to be an incredible series at the Yard this weekend. Orioles and Phillies, the team playing spectacular baseball. Phillies are playing right now as a record against the Red Sox, but they've got 46 wins. The Orioles have 45 wins. The Yard is going to be sold out all 3 nights this weekend. It is going to be a heck of a time. Friday night, 7:05, Rangers Suarez, maybe the front runner for NL Cy Young, a 1.81 ERA. The lefty takes the mound. Kyle Bradish, who's been great, takes the mound. The Orioles. Then it's Saturday at 4:05. Taijuan Walker hasn't been very good this year. 5+ ERA goes up against Grayson Rodriguez. O's need to jump all over Walker. And then on Sunday, it's Zach Wheeler, the ace, one of the best pitchers in baseball, a 2 ERA, goes up against Corbin Burnes. All eyes in baseball might be on that Sunday matchup between Zach Wheeler and Corbin Burnes. This is the series in Major League Baseball. A potential World Series preview is happening in Baltimore this weekend. These two teams have been amazing all year. I am fired up for this series. And on Monday, I'll be back on the pod to recap everything that happens between the O's and the Phils this weekend. But until then, I'm Connor Newcomb, and this has been the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.